Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vance.
So we meet again, dear reader. This time I've dug deep into my collection of blood-curdling tales.
Oh, that's a long one. We got Chris.
Spooky Doctor.
Oh, that's a short one. I'm Kia. Hi, welcome to the show. We're reading some spooky books. It's October. Ooh, the spookiest month of the year. I think is what we've been told for years and years, and I will not dispute that. But we are reading some Tales from the Crypt, if you recognize Vince's quote. Actually, no, we're not really reading Tales from the Crypt. We're reading the precursor to Tales from the Crypt. I think we got to talk about the history of this book a little bit. At the end of the show, we're also going to read Squadron Supreme number 4, which is probably the scariest issue of that book as well so far. Ooh, they knew it was October. Yeah, it got real scary. We'll get to that later. But we've got Tales from the Crypt, published by EC Comics in 1950. Entertaining Comics, I believe the EC stood for. They started out as educational comics. Did y'all read the foreword at the beginning?
I did.
I liked it.
Well, it also had there was 2 forewords. There was like one by John Carpenter, and John Carpenter just basically wrote like 3 paragraphs like, I like this.
Yeah.
But the other one was like a whole history of EC Comics, which like it seemed like the founder was like, we're going to make Bible comics. Which and then he died like in a car crash or something. And then his kid took over and was like, I hate this. We're making
I don't want to be here. What am I doing? I want to be what was his job? I want to be a science teacher or something. And he little by little starts reading these books as a kid. You know what? They're not bad. And he starts getting into it, and they start changing things up and trying to like sell better and better. And they start telling a lot of these pulp stories. Like the story that the foreword tells is that this kid didn't really know what he was doing. He was just kind of following industry trends. And until things started to take off for them, so this book that is Tales from the Crypt started for the first 5 issues as International Comics. Then issue number 6 became International Crime Patrol. It got more specific. Then the next few issues from 7 through 16 were Crime Patrol. They dropped the International. They got less specific. But the last few issues of that started to contain a few horror stories that people really liked. And so with issue number 17, they said, you know what, let's just turn this into a full horror comic, Crypt of Terror. They called it that for 3 issues until they said, yeah, this is good, but let's just change the name to Tales from the Crypt with issue number 20. And that continued like that for, I think, until that ran out with issue 46. So we today are just going to read those 3 issues, which were like the first horror issues for them, 17 through 19, Crypt of Terror. And, you know, again, the foreword kind of tells a story that they set the trend and everyone else started copying them with horror comics. I don't necessarily know how true that is, but I'm excited to read what...
Yeah,
go ahead.
It feels like it's in the bubble though. Like this is 1950. I don't know if we specifically said that, but this is I call these like like Twilight Zone comics because they're all like it's a different cast every story. They usually have some twist or morality tale, and it's always got kind of like a weird bent. But I mean, we've read books like this from Marvel, like Tales to Astonish, and even like Detective Comics was this. It was detective stories, and then Batman sprung out of it, and I think Wonder Woman, Journey into Mystery, all these types of things was just a very popular trend. And I'm assuming just based off of the fact that like they kept their numbering is probably because they just had a slot on newsstands that they were expected to deliver a book, and they didn't want to like jinx that or ruin it by coming up with a new number 1. The same that, you know, like Cosmo just has a slot at your grocery store and no one's taking Cosmo's slot, kind of thing. So... I just find that interesting. And of course, like this all ends, I think, around like issue 46 because I don't know how much we want to go into Seduction of the Innocent, but I'm going to go into it right now. Is basically a dude said, hey, these comics are really bad and they're corrupting our youth, and our youth are becoming like evil the same way that they said about video games and violent movies. And basically it almost, I don't know if EC Comics decided to stop doing this intentionally, or they cut and run, or they just basically got like driven out of the market.
I mean, the comics code basically doesn't let you do books like this anymore. They still did Mad was their big, book that survived. So they did Mad Magazine for, another 50 years.
Up until like last year. Well, they didn't. They got bought by DC or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say it got out of EC's hands eventually, but they did run it for like another 40 years or whatever. But yeah, I mean, all the stuff about the original comics code, you couldn't have vampires, so it's like you can't. They were kind of over correcting. I mean, we'll see. I think it's an interesting because this is 1950 is Like, superheroes have been around for 10 years. You've got presumably kids that grew up reading, like Action Comics #1 in like 1939. They would be like 18 or 19 now. So like you've got, and I'm sure a lot of those readers are already gone, but you've got basically new readers that are teenagers and adults that are looking for something that's not like superhero tights comics.
Yeah.
So, there's other genres.
Exactly. This definitely feels like the first book, like old comic book that we've read that wasn't written for 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like these feel like they were written, I mean, in a time before a lot of television propagation. Like you would maybe see these as like television shows like later, but this is 1950. TVs aren't like super common, and it definitely feels like it's written for adults, not
and I don't know if we've explicitly mentioned that each issue did contain multiple stories. That it's typically 4 different little stories and maybe a couple of prose ones mixed in here, which again matches all that Tales to Astonish, all that sort of stuff. This is definitely what comics were for just the longest period of time here. But I think, are we ready to just jump into them?
Yeah.
I think so. Let's go right into Crypt of Terror number 17. With this one has a nice little werewolf cover, and so I'm excited to read a werewolf story. Always love those. I feel like we never read too much. There's never enough werewolf stories out there. We need more werewolves, less vampires. That's what I say. Team Jacob. So he's
the worst one.
Look, I don't know.
I don't know. Chris, you may have actually covered Twilight on Your Stupid Minds, but I feel like on the scale of the worst one, I feel like that's a pretty deep bench on Twilight. So Jacob may not be the worst one, but
I stand by it.
Okay.
I don't. I've never read or seen it, so
I've seen Twilight's 1 and 3, and that's it.
All right. Okay, so here we go. Story 1, Death Must Come, drawn by Al Feldstein. We should mention they do credit sort of each individual artist on these stories. Sometimes they don't. I believe they always have the artist information. They don't always have the writer information, so I didn't really read all that. But they. This one's all about this dude who. You kind of get the twist very early. It almost feels like this book starts with a twist where. It's some guy, he's called his old partner back, and he's like, what? It's only been 5 years since the last time. And you learn all this history about them where they've discovered the secret to eternal youth, and you have to take this gland out of a recently dead body.
It's real loose 50s sci-fi. It's a gland.
Right, yeah.
Deal with it. I don't know.
It's very loose sci-fi, yeah. And so they're like discovering, they're going through the paper and be like, oh, this person just died less than 48 hours ago. It's a fresh body. Let's go dig it up, and we'll do the gland. And this guy stays young. Like 25 years later, he calls his friend and is like, hey, I'm still kind of young, but I can feel myself getting old. Help me steal another gland. And, they do it. And the time is shrinking less and less and less between these moments. And finally, it's like this other guy's super old and the other guy's still young. And he's not into it anymore. He says, I'm not going to help you anymore. Like, we're not going to do it. And he punches the guy, and of course the old man dies, and
there's a lot of heart attacks in these books. But
there's constant people dying of shock. Shock is such a strong weapon in these books.
If we had done contests, there were so many of these we could have done. We could have definitely done person dying of heart attack, person trying to murder their spouse. That's a very common theme in these, and people named George. There's a lot of Georges in these three books.
Yep.
I need to do the George counter. Yeah, but there's basically brown-haired guy and blonde guy.
There we go.
Blonde guy's old.
So blonde guy's old. He dies. Brown-haired guy is still young and is like, well, shit. Now, I still need a gland. What am I going to do? And he calls a telegram and delivers a telegram to himself so that he can murder the delivery boy. And so he does this, and he goes to open up the guy for surgery to take the gland out. He sees something that shocks him, and he, like his, I guess, immune system, whatever, his body gets jump-started back into like life, and he grows old and instantly dies. And the Crypt Keeper ends by saying, it ends with the Crypt Keeper explaining the whole story and all that. And he goes, yeah, so basically what happened is he opened the guy up and saw that he didn't have the gland, and he was shocked and he died. And that was a very, very interesting way to end this first story, I thought, by having the Crypt Keeper reveal the shock. But
reveal the extra twist.
The extra twist. I'm like, okay, cool.
This book is so thirsty also for like letters. It's like, if you like this type of story, will you write us and tell us? At 225 Lafayette Street, which fun fact, EC Comics is no longer at 225 Lafayette Street. I looked it up in the it's
what's there now?
It's Executravel is now there.
Never been. I'm gonna check
still
it out.
An Execu, so there's still an EC there, so maybe maybe they're still
curious.
alive.
Very curious to learn what kind of comics they're publishing. So let's go to the next story here. The Man Who Was Death. I actually really like this one.
This one moves. This one's one of my favorites.
It's about an executioner who loves his job. He's the best executioner out there. He really gets off on it, and he becomes famous for it.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Yeah, to the point where prisoners are sending him invitations to come view their death, which is extra confusing to me. But you know what? That's fine. And after a little while, I guess people are just starting to behave well. They're not committing crimes. The ones who are always getting convicted of not guilty.
My favorite scene, I guess we'll get to it in a second here, but it's when that guy's like, now to take a shower to relax after that murder trial.
Yeah, oh boy, what a murder trial. Glad the jury believed me. Time for a shower. But he is he's going mad, this executioner. He's just like, I need to kill somebody. Like, I want them to all be punished for their sins. And so finally he starts going after these people who are having the not guilty verdict, and he's murdering them anyways. He's going rogue. He's like electrocuting their fence. It's always some kind of electricity that he's using to kill them. And
because he used the electric chair.
And what's interesting is that the book doesn't, posit it like it's not like some gangster who like got off on a technicality. It's like, no, literally they didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, it's not Dexter. It's not Dexter.
Yeah, I think maybe the first one is like a little ambiguous of like, well, did that guy have it coming? But the next few, it's very clear that they're like, you hear their internal monologue of like, glad the jury believed me about not doing that crime that I definitely didn't do. So yeah, we definitely see. And that scene in the shower, it doesn't even like what happens. It's just.
It's hot
I
water.
guess
He burned him to death.
Scalded? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very unclear picture, but I got the gist of it, that he died by shower. Death by shower. But of course, one of the detectives is like, hey, I think I'm onto this guy, follows the next not guilty verdict home, and so he can catch him in the act. And oh, what irony, that guy is now getting executed. Womp womp.
Oh, what a twist. We didn't see that one coming. This is very like Twilight Zone. It's like, now he's the one being executed.
Yeah, and then the officer sees him because he's like, it's a good thing there's that bolt of lightning. So it's like, he's like an electricity guy, foils him.
Yeah. If it wasn't for that lightning, he wouldn't have been a flashlight to see him. Yeah. Good one. So
this was a stronger story than the first one. Like the first one's based on a movie. Which I guess is maybe that's why they let off with it. But the second one, I'm like, this is better, and I like his cartoonish big head.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, it was he was a very unique image across all these. I remember him pretty well.
But I did like that first story. That's actually like available as part of the free preview on Amazon. So when we were deciding like, do we want to do this book? And I was like, how is this going to read? And I'm like, I read that preview. That whole first story was in the preview. I'm like, this is solid enough. I know where this is going. Yeah. I know exactly what it is. The art is good.
It was weird. Yeah, it's like, it's not how I would have told that story, but I still really enjoyed it, Yeah. I'm like, it's 1950. You know what? You're not as smart as I am, 1950. I'm a way better writer than you, but you're still okay.
To be fair, I mean, I'm blowing my final conclusions here, but like compared to the Tales to Astonish and the Journey to Mystery and everything that like didn't take off, like the Ant-Mans and the Iron Mans that came out and Thors that came out of that, this is better than those other stories that didn't.
For sure.
Like all of those I've read, I'm like, this is much better. Tales from the Crypt is much better than those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know how art driven this is, but it definitely feels like it when, like the Crypt Keeper reveals at the end of the first story, it's like, what did he see? No gland. How about that? You're just like, the artist is clearly like steering this ship, because it's like, why would you choose to draw nothing? It just doesn't make sense.
It's a real Stan Lee being like, okay, well, I got a paper over this because the art wasn't as clear as it could have been.
Yeah, it's like, what are you trying to show? If the answer is nothing. But yeah, so I like this second story. So then the third story is The Corpse Nobody Knew, which I don't even remember which one this is.
This one I didn't like this one very much. There's a couple, and the guy happens to be a detective, and they go into their hotel room, and there's a corpse in the closet. Oh no! And so
this is a crime story, not a ghost story. Get out of here.
It's a crime story, and it's a weird crime story as well, because the husband says, "Okay, honey, I'm a detective. I'm going to go downstairs and talk to the hotel manager about this. You stay here with the body." The guy goes downstairs to the hotel manager, and the hotel manager is not there. But there's like the hotel detective there. I guess that's a job. And sure. He says, "Oh, the hotel manager just kind of ran out of here in a hurry. That was kind of strange. And hey, let's go look in the hotel safe. I've been investigating this guy for I've been on to him." And they open up the safe and well, everything's gone. I think the hotel manager took the money and ran. And he probably killed this guy on his way out or something. And at no point do they return back up to the body at all. And they're investigating the larcen, is that the right word? Just the money laundering, the money thieving, all that kind of stuff.
And, right. And they do have the single line that they're like, we can't recognize the body, and also acid burned off his fingerprints, and also there's no way to identify him. So it's okay, so it's just a body.
Just a body. But wife is there alone. Husband does not update the wife at all. I think they go to the police station and they're dealing with all this stuff. Wife finally says, well, I'm going to start doing some stuff. She finds a torn up picture. What is it?
It's like a torn up receipt for a photograph negative, or I don't know,
or something.
She finds a receipt, then she can go back to wherever the photography place was and then remake another copy of that picture.
Right.
Which will obviously be a clue.
Right, obviously. And by this point, I've figured it out to where this fake hotel detective guy, or maybe he was, I don't know what he was, but it
was the dude in purple, and I'm like, the second he showed up, I'm like, I've watched enough Scooby-Doo to know this guy is obviously not on the up and up. This one didn't try to hide it too much either.
Yeah. No. And it's actually that guy killed the hotel manager, who is that dead body up there. He took the money, and he, for some reason, stopped to talk to everybody instead of just leaving. So, I don't know.
Yeah, as part of an elaborate attempt to frame his dead boss. Okay, case over. And then they have a funny line about now let's go back home where there's no spooky things. And you're like, okay, well.
That's another good over-under we could have done for this one, where there's so many times where people think they've gotten off scot-free, except the very last line of the book is, actually, you're under arrest, or something like that. And
actually, you have a fatal heart condition and die.
Yes. Oh.
And they're smoking 100 cigarettes a day, so.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. The last one in this book is The Curse of the Full Moon. Johnny Craig seems to have a story or a cover art in pretty much all these, and Al Feldstein seems to have done the first art in all these. I didn't discuss all of these. That's okay.
Yeah, Johnny Craig he's the cover artist for all of them, and he always does at least one story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this was a Johnny Craig one about two guys who are just buddies, and they travel the world together, and every time they're in a different location, there's a werewolf that strikes. They learn about how it's wolfsbane, whoever touches it, and one of the guys is sweating. He's like, oh my god, I touched wolfsbane, and he discovers evidence of these murders on his own clothes later, and he's trying to get rid of him. He's like, oh my god, I'm the werewolf. We got to keep moving. And the friend's like, okay, whatever. Until finally the nervous guy comes clean and says, man, I think I'm a werewolf. You got to commit me. And then the friend says, actually, I was the werewolf. And that was kind of it.
Yeah. This was a good story idea, but it was very rushed.
Yeah. It was fun. The art was nice. I enjoyed seeing this guy sweat and all the different creatures that he kills a dog, and you see the fur. He kills some woman and takes her shoe. He kills some bellhop and takes his hat. There's always some trophy that this werewolf seems to want to keep of his murders. I don't know why.
Well, it makes more sense when the werewolf is pinning it on his friend.
That's true. Yeah.
But he's not. He doesn't end up framing his friend.
Right.
Yeah, he's just gonna kill his friend. That's gonna kind of ruin it.
Yeah, I don't know. But
the guy already thinks he's a werewolf. You don't need to reveal it. You could just commit him. Or unless you're wanting to think I need him out in the world so he can still be a plausible guy if the heat gets bad. Maybe that's why he's keeping him alive until that point.
Yeah.
I don't
nobody
know.
seems to be really thinking like. I wish I had seen more of the investigation side of things here. Maybe
that's the funny thing about this book. The police are very rarely involved in any of these stories. The executioner story. So much. Yeah, there's not a lot of propaganda in this one.
It's all like noir, like detectives.
Yep. Okay, so on to issue. Oh, did y'all read the prose stories at all? There were a couple in here. I didn't find them particularly interesting, but there's a ski accident one and one of the lines in one of these made me laugh. Who could question the death of a man who had stumbled into a cage full of poisonous serpents? I thought that was a fun.
Who indeed?
Who indeed? Yeah. But on to Crypt of Terror number 18. This is the one with the morgue thing on the cover. The Maestro's Hand is the first story. This was an interesting one. There's a surgeon guy who has a girlfriend, and the girlfriend leaves him for some piano player because she's got the hots for him. But I guess they're still friends, and this piano player cuts his hand one day, so the girlfriend brings the piano player to the ex-boyfriend doctor so that they can fix up his hand. And the doctor guy is like, well, this is terrible. I hate this guy. I'm going to get my revenge here. So he instead amputates him, and he can't play the piano ever again. And of course, the piano player is pissed at him. He's like, "You did this on purpose, you son of a bitch! You're jealous." Goes home, tells his girlfriend before killing himself. Wow. Okay, that's pretty rough. And
this
the girlfriend
happened in like 4 pages, by the way.
It's fast.
It's like page 1, we're in love, but now actually I'm leaving you. Page 2, like, oh, I cut my hand. Let's go visit my ex. Page 3,
yeah.
like
if
I
it
cut
feels
off
like
his
I'm
hand.
rushing.
Page 4,
feels like I'm rushing
myself.
through it. That's how we go. Yeah. Then the ex-girlfriend also kills herself because she's upset about the whole situation. And then the surgeon. This is when like the story really gets going. Surgeon's hanging out, and this hand has come back to life.
Right.
There's
he
some
goes
really
to like
cool...
a vacation home and gets some mail, and it's a hand.
Yeah, and it's like there's some really cool images of just this hand like crawling around, and the
it looks
the
a
guy
lot
is
like
just
Evil Dead 2 because it's like in a cabin. I'm not sure if Raimi and company read Tales from the Crypt, quite possibly, or if it's just like in an ether of like, oh, just a hand, a disembodied hand killing people in the woods. That's just a common trope.
Yeah, maybe this started the trope. Who knows? But I particularly like the shot of the hand going up the chimney. I thought that was a good one. Yeah. We eventually just kind of learn like this hand's trying to choke him, and the hand eventually catches up to him and just chokes him to death. And then the cops show up, and they say, you kind of learn that he was choked by his own hand. He was just so guilty about this crime that he thought the hand was coming back to kill him. Wow. Oh. Scary.
I think the hand framed him and put his other hand.
That's also possible. That's also very possible. Yeah,
otherwise... I just looked it up. Even though the Addams Family existed at this time, Thing didn't exist yet. That was 1954, first appearance of the hand.
There you go.
And that's that's in the comic strip, I'm assuming, Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And because Addams Family comic strip would be interesting to cover on this show. Because I know on the TV show at that time it was just like a hand in a box because they obviously didn't have the effects of like the 90s movie.
Right.
That makes sense. There are also a lot of these stories that end with, "Oh, it was all in their head," and that happens.
That would have been a good bet too.
Yeah. The next one is The Living Corpse by Wally Wood, who we've talked about him a little bit. I've only read some of his like 60s comics that he did, the superhero stuff that I always remember being particularly crisp. So I was excited to see this one. And it did look a little bit different from all the other styles at first, and I wasn't super feeling it until there was that one image of the guy lying in bed with the horrors kind of circling around him. It felt very different from everything else in these 3 issues that we read. I liked it a lot.
My panel of the week is on page 2 of this story when it's just the main guy. He's just chilling, reading a book at his desk with a dead body behind him coming to life. As you do.
So we didn't talk about who this guy is. Yeah, he's a mortician, and he's in that room. What do you call that room with all the dead bodies and the little mini fridges?
Morgue.
Thank you. A morgue. And the story itself was a little strange, where this body comes to life, and I don't remember. Was it the same guy the first time coming to life as it was later?
He looks different, but you find out why at the end.
Okay,
He's aging.
I see.
No, because he's a magician.
Oh.
What?
So this guy, so the second... All right.
Are we talking about the main dude?
There's a body
No, yeah. I'm talking about the different corpses.
You were talking about the main dude, Vince. Yeah.
Okay.
So he sees a corpse, and this corpse comes to life, and he's like, that was weird. And then the corpse runs away, and he's like, I don't know what to do about this. I'm just gonna like tear the page out of the book like it never happened, and we're gonna keep going. And then later they get a couple that are both dead. It's the magician's assistant and the magician. But then the magician comes to life because he wasn't really dead. He's just trying to retrieve his ring from her or something. Well, he was trying to get
no. So
I missed. Oh boy, yeah. Go ahead.
So he gets freaked out by the first time it happens. Then he kind of has a nervous breakdown. There's some good like psychedelic imagery. Then it happens a second time where he's just like, God, I hope this doesn't happen again. And then it does. And then he's like, I got to take my mind off this. And then he goes to a magic show, and they're like, this guy can simulate death for 5 minutes.
Oh, like, how did I miss that?
That's spooky.
Very spooky.
And then his assistant isn't there at that show. And so then he's reading the paper, and he's like, it says here his assistant died. And then he turns and sees the assistant, and then she's got like a ring mark on her face or whatever, or on her neck that shows that the magician killed her. And so then it turns out that the magician has been like breaking into the morgue to like find this body and to like freak this guy out too, I guess, as a bonus.
Yeah, I mean, and then the magician ends up accidentally killing himself or accidentally knocking himself out by just slamming his head into the marble wall.
Yeah.
And so the mortician locks him in one of the fridges real quick. And then how does the mortician end up dying? He just trips on something?
He just is having a freak out because he's been scared so many times and has a heart attack and dies.
There we go. And the magician is trapped in the fridge, and so he's going to suffocate and die, and everyone's dead. Wow. Wow, what a story.
Yep.
This was a strange one. I didn't particularly wasn't super interested in it, but it was what it was. The next,
as you say, I actually like the next one a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the next one quite a bit. Madness at Manderville, where it's a husband and wife, and the wife's little brother had been killed a while back. Did we learn much about this one? About like why the little brother died? They kept
it's their son, not their brother.
Their son. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, their son had died, and so wife is just going crazy about all this. The
husband looks like Peter Parker.
The husband does look like Peter Parker. Yeah, husband's like, honey, I told you need to not be in the kitchen right now. You are losing it. And she is just like keeps seeing things, and she thinks she's going crazy, like witnessing herself like committing terrible crimes and that kind of thing. Was it terrible crimes?
Well, somebody kills what was it, a mouse or some kind of little animal.
A dog got murdered at some point too.
Oh, that's right. Dog.
Yeah.
This is very similar to the werewolf story. They're like, I am clearly murdering all these things. I need to go to a mental institution.
Yes. And the husband is trying to take care of her until finally he's like, yeah, you're right. We need to get you to a mental institution. And they go to the mental institution, and they're like, y'all are right. This person is crazy. We need to lock them up. Come with us. Let's sign all these forms. We're going to commit you. Surprise! We're committing the husband.
What?
And
what a twist!
He was the one who was crazy, and he kept telling his wife, that nothing was going on, but there was something going on, and he was crazy for not seeing it.
Because like the neighbors were like, "No, we heard those sounds too."
It's not quite gaslighting because it's crazy.
Yeah, I wrote down gaslighting for sure, and then I was like, well, wait a minute, not really. He thought he was doing the right thing. Okay, I guess it is what it is. It was a lot of like, okay, yeah, this book ended like that. Okay.
I do want to talk about the letter page here right after this story, because this was my favorite. Like, the letters are also like hilarious in this book. My favorite one is, and they're super short. They're only like a sentence, which I don't know if they wrote them on postcards or if they just wrote their own letters and faked it. But my favorite is Dear Crypt Keeper, I am a girl of 15. And I'm not allowed to have dates, so I have all my weekends free to read comic books. Which is like a real, like, this girl in the 1950s really putting her parents on blast. Like, my parents are the worst. They won't let me go on dates, so I just have to read Tales from the Crypt comics all day. She's like a little cute goth girl that's just like, yeah, I like these spooky books.
So. If only they knew what goths were in 1950, she'd be all over it.
She would be. If she was transplanted to like today or our high school days, she would have had a much better time.
Right. Yeah. A time with malls where you could, dye your hair and just hang out with other people that look like you.
Yep. Good time.
But no, she's forced not to go to Doc's malt shop on dates with Archie.
Oh, poor girl. All right, so the next issue is called. Oh, well, I like the little prequel. I didn't like it. I feel like I wanted to mention it. Is the prequel little thing to the title where it says women are known as the talkative sex, but I never fully realized the power of the unspoken word until I became a mute witness to murder.
This feels like a Futurama.
Yes, there's a weird sort of sexist, but not super overtly sexist thing about all these, where women are often just not in control of any kind of situation. And it's always like the male in some sort of a typical power job, like the cop is actually a bad cop, or the doctor is actually a bad doctor, and the woman is just kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's actually pointing out that these abuses exist. So it's not like it's a negative portrayal. It's like she witnesses a murder. It makes her mute for some reason.
The shock.
Yeah, for like what, 20 days or some amount of time, she's going to be mute, and then her stupid husband is like, "Oh, don't worry, I know a doctor that lives across the street from us."
Yes.
Yeah, who's the murderer? Because he's the one who she saw the murder of her neighbor. Murder his wife.
But she couldn't say anything about it.
She couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And so then the doctor tries to like have her committed, like so she can't find out about the murder. Which I love that in this world, maybe there's just no cops in 1950s, because everybody seems to think, or people, maybe if I murder my spouse but there were no witnesses, no one's going to ask questions like, what happened to your spouse? No one's going to follow up on that. Maybe people just skip town a lot more fucking frequently, just like bolted on their spouse in the 1950s, or the stories like at least thinking that, because like there's like, what happened to your wife? I don't know, she gone. Definitely didn't murder
she's out
her.
of town. Yeah. I mean, there's no way to track a lot of that stuff back then.
I guess.
Yeah, if you just say like, oh yeah, she's living with her parents right now, we're having a rough time, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense why I haven't seen her in 10 years.
Just nobody follows up. It's hilarious.
Yep.
Really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that is, this is kind of like Rear Window. If what's her name, Grace Kelly was mute for some reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so they the doctor says you are going to be locked up, and we're going to put you in a straitjacket so you can't even write down that I did it, which would have been a smart thing for her to do before she got locked up. But yeah, what can you do?
Right. Well, she's like, because she's mute and she's like struggling, and then he's like, I'm going to give her, they always call it a hypo, but the doctor knocks her out and presumably takes her to some mental institution and is like, oh yeah, she's totally insane right now, so you can't even see her.
Yeah.
The husband's like, duh, okay.
And I didn't really like the ending too much. It didn't feel clever to me, where I thought there was going to be something more along the lines, because she started to get her voice back. And I was like, oh, how's this going to come into play? How is she going to finally use it to get up on this guy? And so the doctor comes in and says, all right, we're going to take you to murder you now, so that not murder you, but like, put you down.
I mean, that's still murder. He's like, we're going to have brain surgery, and I'm going to intentionally screw up
that's right. Yeah, I'm going to intentionally screw up this brain surgery. So come with me. I'm going to untie you right now so that we can get you out of here. And once he unties her, she just goes, and starts attacking him and kills him. And so he's dead, and she's got her voice back, and I guess she's free now. She calls the attendant. There were a lot of details that made me think they were going to add up to something, and they didn't. Like, they very explicitly pointed out this detail of, like, you see how I push this button, and that's the only way to open this door, and I will contact my, the person on the other end who will push a button and open it. And that didn't really come up. It was just kind of strange.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I did like the art. This was what's his name, Curtis, Johnny Curtis, and this is I mean, I think all of these books are a little horny, but like this, they're pretty horny in drawing this lady. She is like a very Betty Page type.
Yeah, so that was the last story of that one here. On to anything else to say about those? No, I think we're good. We're good. On to number 19. This is my favorite cover. I think we talked about it in the last one. The Voodoo Drums cover. I really enjoyed that with the ghost in the background.
Yeah, it's a great cover. I wish that scene was in the book. Spoiler.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it.
There was some generally good art through some of these. It looked a little different throughout all this issue here. The first story is the Ghost Ship. And it's a couple, their plane crashes in the ocean, they're on a raft, and they come across a ghost ship. And they don't know it's a ghost ship, of course. They just get on it, and the last entry from the ship's log was 1854, and they're reading all about all this stuff, and they're getting scared, and like the captains keep getting changed out because there's like mutiny, and the captains are getting murdered, and someone else takes over.
And this very much feels like, because this is artist driven, I always sometimes feel like some of these stories are specifically just because the artist wanted to draw cool things. So like the first few pages is like, we're flying a plane in a storm, isn't that fun? And then like the next few pages are, spooky ghost ship, and then it just turns into a pirate book for a couple pages.
Yeah,
like, and it's a lot of like, here's the history of this ship and the different captains and what happened to them, and then a big like cruise ship or whatever it is comes through, and it like goes right through the ghost ship. What? And so they're like, let's get off of this thing and let's go back to our little thing, our little rescue boat, and we'll flag them down, and they do, and they get rescued. And the people on that ship are like, we didn't see any other pirate ship. And that's the end.
Yeah.
I feel like go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it doesn't add up to much. Like the last entry is like the ghost pirate being like, from the first captain being like, I will captain this ship forever, blah, blah, blah. Even though like he had disappeared and had been replaced by 2 other people. So it's like, oh, he's a ghost. But then like you never see him and nothing ever happens.
Yeah, nothing happens at all. It's like someone did some really great world building and then forgot to tell a story.
Well, and sometimes I read the Crypt Keepers like lines that like conclude these stories with like a lot of disdain, like, and that's the story. Strange. What do you think happened? Was it all in their minds, or did Don and Carol actually sail on a ghost ship? And that's it. Like, he doesn't know. He doesn't care.
Yeah. The next story I think had my favorite overall art in the book. I wrote Graham Ingalls did the art for this one.
Definitely looks a lot different.
Yeah.
The first issues, they start breaking in the second issue, but like the first issue, like every single panel is just like square. They're starting to mess with panel shape and panel size a lot more as these books go on, and like a lot more angles, and like perspective drawing.
Yeah, I what was it called? The Hungry Grave. It was about a woman who was killing people, and
she wanted to murder her husband.
Yeah.
Again, you murder your husband, no one's going to follow up and ask what happened to your husband. He's gone.
Yeah. And there's this other guy who's going to help her bury the bodies.
Yeah, and I think that what they were planning on doing was putting him in the mausoleum, and then when the gravedigger was going to bury some other body that day, they were just going to throw the extra husband's body in there. So there'll be 2 bodies inside this coffin. That was the plan.
But then the husband realizes...
Well, she's been poisoning her husband every night with arsenic, but he might have developed an immunity because she's been giving it to him for so long. So he's kind of groggy from it and actually not killed from it.
Yeah, and so instead he kills her and puts her in the body. She's like the bag, and she's like trying to fight her way out, and this other guy who was helping is like, whoa. He thinks it's the guy who was like the original plan.
Still like fighting. Right. Okay, well I guess I'll just bury him.
I'm just gonna bury him. I don't have the heart to look in there and actually like kill him myself, and so I'm just gonna let him suffocate to death. But actually, it was her, and then that's it.
Yep.
I think.
What a twist.
That's it. What a twist. I like the third one quite a bit, the caveman. I feel like I think how much I like them just depends on how clearly the story is told. And this one is told fairly clearly, where this guy is working at some museum. He's putting together this exhibit. He's really proud of it. It's going to be his life's work. It's going to make him famous, and he's really close to finishing it. But then his boss comes in and says, hey, I just discovered this caveman. We found it in the ice, and it's perfectly preserved. I need you to drop what you're doing. But, I know it's your life's work, but it's basically shit compared to this caveman I found. So forget your project. Do mine instead. And the guy's like, well, he's my boss. I have to. But he's super bitter about it. manages to do both. He puts up this caveman exhibit with ice, but also finishes his. But when the exhibit opens, nobody cares about his, because his boss was right. His work was shit in comparison to this caveman. And so he gets super jealous. He says, I'm going to fuck up his exhibit. Takes the caveman out of the ice exhibit and takes it up to the roof to put it in the sun.
This was where I was confused, because I assumed that they were going to completely de-thaw the caveman and put him in this exhibit, and he was going to walk around the little habitat, like a zoo, is what I thought they were going to do. But I guess they chipped all of his ice away, but then left him still cryogenically frozen.
Well, they thought. Exactly. They thought he's already preserved. We don't have to do anything to this body to preserve it after we've gotten it out of the ice. We're just going to stand him up in here, and he's dead. He's going to stay
we'll leave him in basically a fridge that people can look into, and then we're going to put some fake dinosaurs behind him in a tree, so it looks like he's like you're in the Natural History Museum or something. They've got the the little models, the mannequins, whatever.
Which I don't feel like a real museum would put dinosaurs behind a caveman.
1950, man. I feel like these artists and writers did the mildest amount of research in that, actually how police work is and science. I don't think they.
I would say zero research.
Yeah, is watching a midnight movie equivalent research?
Yeah.
That's the extent of what I feel like they did. I love it though. I'm fine with it, but. It's very cute, but
right. So he takes this guy up to the ceiling where he says, the sun's going to thaw him out. As soon as he's thawed out, his body's going to decompose and he's going to be ruined. And that doesn't happen. And he says, well, tomorrow I'll bring a heat lamp. That'll do it. So he puts him back in the exhibit. But while he's putting him back, the guy's starting to twitch and stuff. And he comes to life and murders him. Which he's a caveman. What are you going to do? That's how caveman's roll. Just murder stuff.
This is another panel of the week. Is after he murders the dude, then he's just got a big scratching his head and 3-word balloons of question mark, question mark, question mark. That's another panel of the week for me. I like that one.
Yeah, this is before he went to law school.
I'm just an unfrozen caveman lawyer. I'm not familiar with all your.
So he goes back to. He gets sad because he's like, well. I'm just going to go back to this exhibit because I like that. And it's like home. I guess they did a pretty accurate job. And so he goes there and refreezes. I guess we're led to believe. And so they go back to the exhibit and they're like, wow, looks like he jumped off the roof. Well, I guess he's dead. And that's kind of that story. Yep. A lot of these stories end and I'm just like, well, I wish I had something else I could say about it. It just kind of ends. That's cool.
They're all morality tales. It's Twilight Zone stuff. It's and then the caveman froze him, and everybody didn't realize the caveman murdered him. Now the caveman's frozen again. Oh, how weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if the last one is a morality tale. Maybe I missed some of the stuff here as well, but
this is more of a spooky story.
It is more of a spooky story. Yeah. It felt a lot pulpier than some of the others. He just, it's some photographer, and he's examining this native tribe, and they are doing some ritual around this ancient-looking ghoul of a woman who then is brought back to life and is looking fresh and young. And he gets scared by all this and runs away. And we learn that this was, a wife who was killing her husband? Something.
No, her husband kills her.
He was a plantation owner, and he beat the natives, and she was real nice to the natives. She gave them water and food and other stuff. And so they liked her. That trailing off other stuff wasn't imply sex. Sorry, it was just I don't remember. I was just got out of the sentence. But so
I don't remember either because it felt so disconnected from the actual story. This photographer guy had no agency to any of this stuff, right?
Yeah,
he was just kind of there.
Some of these stories just have a weird framing device. There's just an excuse to talk about a spooky subject and then call it a day. This cover with the blasted voodoo drums ever since I murdered my wife. That stuff's not really in this story at all, which is disappointing. But basically the evil plantation owner killed his wife, and then the natives were mad. And I don't remember if they killed him. But definitely, they try to bring her back as a zombie.
No, her ghost kills him.
Okay.
Yeah, her ghost follows him, and he falls into quicksand, and I think that's how he died.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, the photographer says, I got a picture of this thing. She didn't show up in the picture. What? And that's the end of that one.
Yeah, I could totally see this being like a episode, like a forgotten episode, because it's very racist, of like the Twilight Zone or something, where it's just like developing the photo and like everything developing except the ghost woman. I'm like, that's a good twist, but yeah, it doesn't really connect to anything.
Well, I think that's what it is. I think if I'd gone into it knowing this was just going to be a framing device for this other story, I always wanted there to be more, though. You know, I thought something else was going to happen that involves the more present. Same thing with the ghost ship one, where I thought something was going to happen involving the current people who are, stumbling upon this.
Yeah, I do like the first page, like splash page though, where it just says "zombie" in all caps.
Yeah, that was
there's like the fire and her like skeletal face. That's good.
Overall, yeah, every single one of these issues had something good. If not just the art, like some of the stories I thought were pretty interesting. Nothing that's going to blow your mind in 2020, but still fun to check out.
Yeah,
70 years old. Wow.
Yeah, 1950. I think also like we usually read like about like 6 issues or like a full volume or something. We cut it in half because we knew we'd be talking about 12 stories and
yeah.
And so it's a lot of stories. And I would say that that's probably right. I feel like if you read these all in succession, like
you'd get so tired of them.
Yeah, like these were published every 2 months, which makes sense because you start feeling the beats. Like obviously, like this thing's not going to be really there. Like, was that even real? Like that's a thing they pull out a lot. You know, it's a spouse being murdered. It's something coming back to life. I'm actually the one. You're not the crazy one. I'm the crazy one. Like that kind of stuff is. We're already seeing the beats over and over again, despite only reading 3 issues of this. I still really like it. It's very weird for an older comic. And because one, there's not much cops in it, but two, like from what I'm used to, but also like the protagonists about 50-50 or the character you follow are the bad guy, which is really weird. Like from their point of view, like the executioner story, it's uncommon, I feel like, to read comics or stories or like even TV shows where your main character is the villain. It's weird.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely see why the comics code was like, this is bad. You need to have good guys in these stories, even though the bad guys always get their comeuppance at the end.
Always. And yeah, I think it would have had more impact if it was more of a twist sometimes, but it's just such a common twist that I'm like, okay, well, I
there
see.
are 6-page stories also. These are all, like spooky short stories, along with prose stories, which we didn't really talk about.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend these if you're looking for something scary, but if you're looking for just a pulpy, silly twist, they're pretty fun.
Yeah,
astonishing.
And the art's good.
The art is good.
It does remind me too. We talked about it a long time ago. I think we talked about that issue of Supreme, where it's like the Justice League's last case, or the Justice Society's last case, where basically the old witch, the Crypt Keeper, and the third one, who I forget, show up and like make fun of the Justice Society for being lame, and are like, this is the future, and it's all like there's one mad parody, and which is in the Wally Wood style, and then there's one that's like about the horrors of the future, and then there's one about how like everyone is depraved, and so this is the depraved one.
Yes.
Where it's like every wife is scheming to kill her husband. Every doctor is a murderer. Like
people be bad.
Yeah, it's a very
they use a lot of hypodermic needles in this book.
They love hypodermic needles.
It's a good prop. So I think, are we ready to move on to Squadron Supreme?
Chris, you said you read a few more of these. You were going to read a few more of these. Did you go farther?
I did read. I read the first few issues of whatever Tales from the Crypt. I do think they get a little more consistent because that story in the first issue with the corpse that they found is just a police story.
Yeah.
They do get a little more spooky as you go. They're still not like scary. There's just more of the same kind of stuff. I also checked out DC's House of Mystery from the 70s, which was, I think it existed in the 50s, but it came back whenever the horror mini boom happened. And some of those are actually really well drawn. So if you want something that's a little spookier as far as like traditional like ghost stories, I would check out the 70s horror over this stuff, which is mostly just last page twists.
Yeah. Personally, I am a purist, and I hope everyone will sign my petition to get all the digital versions of Tales from the Crypt, the TV show, renamed to International Comics. That's what it should be called. That's the original. But I don't think HBO's listening. That's okay. Can you still get Tales from the Crypt? I guess like on HBO streaming stuff.
Yeah, HBO should own it, right?
Probably.
It should be. I don't know how much they care about that kind of stuff, but yeah, HBO Max would probably have it. I don't have it though.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Apparently, quite a few of these stories were adapted into actual full episodes. So.
Yeah, it's not surprising.
Not at all. Not at all. Cool. Well, I think we are ready to move on to Squadron Supreme #4 now, which, as we mentioned at the beginning, this is a pretty scary issue in and of itself. The cover is all about who has mind-controlled Lady Lark. Oh, boy. All right. So we start with like a bank robbery kind of thing, where the whole team is there. We get a lot of focus on Blue Eagle and Lady Lark. So far, we kind of get a little flirting between Blue Eagle and Lady Lark, and I'm kind of questioning my memory here. I'm like, wasn't Lady Lark with Archer? Mm-hmm. And we find out later, like, yeah, she was. And so it's a bit of a love triangle going on here. And she's kind of telling Blue Eagle, like, I don't know how this thing with Archer is going right now. I thought it would be more serious, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we're not meant to be together. There's some nice action sequences. Basically, I think pretty much everyone is in this fight scene. Amphibian is really reminding me of Beast throughout this fight scene here, bending the thing back on the tank.
Well, he uses his feet too.
Yes, which always helps. Yeah. Which makes sense to me. Like, he is an amphibious guy. He's gonna have very strong leg muscles. Yeah,
like a frog.
Like a frog.
Sure.
Makes sense.
He's gonna dolphin kick the tank.
Yeah. They all have these force belts that are there to help them be like impervious to gunfire, which is setting something up for a little later when Hyperion shows up. Before that, Archer's force belt, it goes out, and he almost dies to gunfire until the Wizard saves him. But he's had this near-death experience now that is starting to kind of affect him. Hyperion shows up, puts an end to everything. There's a giant pile of guns that they are confiscating. It is huge. It is. It's like a massive bonfire kind of thing. It's not on fire, but they are taking them to be melted down. Dr. Spectrum, who from the last issue killed Nuke, he's just kind of not comfortable being out on the field yet. Doesn't want to do any other like accidental killing, so he's just melting the guns, and that's all he's going to do for a while. We get a scene where we learn a little bit about his origins with the power ring. I don't think we'd been shown this before, where we learned that the Skrulls gave it to him, which is another one of those fun little wrinkles of like, oh yeah, this is Marvel owned. It's like very similar to DC, but just kind of its own thing. I like that a lot.
Right. Yeah, it's a parallel Marvel Earth where there's basically a Justice League. So the alien that gives him the power ring is a Skrull.
Yeah, instead of an Owen. But we then go to Nuke's grave. Dr. Spectrum really wants to go check it out and just kind of, pay his respects for a little bit. Archer is his friend, and we've kind of been seeing that a little bit as well. Dr. Spectrum, we don't want to be too sympathetic to the guy. He's the one who caused that wardrobe malfunction in the last issue, and him and Archer were kind of laughing about it. They're definitely representing the good old boys club,
Right. You're right. It's Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and Green Arrow, who we covered on the show.
Yes.
And also, Archer's starting to look a lot like John Stossel for me.
He is, yeah. Real creep mustache
and big stash.
Yep. And Archer tells him, I'm real shaken up by this, but I think it's time I'm going to propose to Lady Lark. And Spectrum's like, yeah, man, go for it. It's going to be great. So we fast forward to the daily meeting. Tom Thumb introduces his behavior modification device, which is like a one of those hair things at a salon where you sit in it and they put your brain under a thing and they can make you think anything.
That's what the salons do.
Yeah. What do you call those chairs you sit in with the thing that goes over your head?
I don't know. It's the big dome kind of thing, though.
I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, the mind control devices. Yeah, and you heard it here first. Never go to the salon. They're secretly taking over your brains and turning you into a lizard.
Yeah, it makes you want to shop. That's why.
Yep. So a debate breaks out over this behavior modification. They're like, wait a minute, when did we agree to this thing that you just made? Should we be doing that? And they're like, well, yeah, it's the most humane way of taking these bad thoughts out of people's minds. We're not changing them. We're just like introducing the idea to them that killing is bad. And so they take a vote. Amphibian and Arcana are the only ones who vote against it. And Amphibian is kind of pissed now, and I really like this. where he's voted no twice in a row, and it's like, well, I'm getting outvoted a lot here. I don't know.
Yeah, and he makes a great point too, because he's just like, guys, laws are arbitrary. Y'all humans have a bunch of laws that oceans don't have that I think are kind of stupid. So who's going to decide like how we decide who a criminal is and who we rehabilitate? And they're like, yeah. We're talking about like dangerous murderers, amphibian. Don't worry.
Yeah, Vince, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, that's the basic point also is like, laws are arbitrary and laws also change when they're determined to be unjust. So you don't want to like put a bunch of like unjust laws into people's heads that like, oh, well, we'll just adhere to these.
Right. Not to bang too hard on it, but like fugitive slave laws and all those things, it was against the law to help escaped slaves. Like that's insane, but that's the reality is that laws are in place as Amphibian says, arbitrarily.
Mm-hmm. So Amphibian has jumped to number 1 on my list.
He is, and closely followed by Arcana. She's we find out she's pregnant, which is also a weird moment.
She has had a couple of kids before, but like she's pregnant again, and kind of is wanting to share that with somebody. But yeah, during this whole meeting, Archer is not paying attention. He's just thinking about how he's going to propose. And so he's like, yeah, whatever. I vote yes. That's fine. And so afterwards he says, hey, Lady Lark, you want to come talk to me for a bit? And he springs the question on her, and she's like, I have to go think about this. And Archer is excited. He's like, yeah, I asked her. This is cool. He shoots off one of his firework arrows because, you got to have one of those. Or like it's, some random explosion arrow. But he's excited.
It's a pretty lame proposal, too. I don't blame her for, spoiler, saying no.
Yeah. It's not a great proposal. Lady Lark goes to Arcana, who's asleep. And it's a very cheesecakey scene here.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, where she's like in bed and naked, but just barely covering herself up so that she can talk to Lady Lark for a bit. And she's like, hey, what should I do? And it's like, yeah, be honest with him. You got to be gentle but firm and tell him that you're not interested. Oh, yeah, she doesn't tell Lady Lark that she's pregnant. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going to ruin her moment with mine. I'll tell them later. Mm-hmm. So she goes, and there's a really nice, like, big monologue where Lady Lark gives her thoughts of, like, these are the reasons why I'm just, like, not super interested right now. And I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen.
I really like the way that this art is set up, though, because it's them it's one on each side of the other panel, and then it's just Lady Lark, like, just a text dump. Of a really long, super wide word balloon. That's almost it's designed to make you. And this is a really good lettering here. It's designed to make you think like she's just talking and talking and talking and like trying to like work around the angle that you would do when you're trying to like deliver bad news, but you don't want to get to the point, or you're trying to like justify it or come up with this whole like conclusion of why this has to be as opposed to being direct. And I love it. It's like overwhelming to the point where I'm like, I'm not even reading it because it's just like overwhelming.
Right.
So
yeah, and Archer's face like is just over the course of this of like seeing it and being shocked, and he's like, you can see the hurt on his face and like the shock, and he lashes out. He's like angry and is like, admit it. It was because you're in love with that other guy.
No, I just don't like you, bro. Like, it has nothing to do with like me being in a different relationship. It's like, you're just not right for me, man.
Yeah. And he like breaks his bow. He's super pissed. He almost punches Spectrum in the face. He's like, oh man, he's like, I'm sorry. It didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. And they have a talk, and he's like, all right, thanks. You made me feel a lot better. And then afterwards, Archer takes a sudden interest in Tom Thumb's mind control device. And he's like super asking Tom Thumb, like, how does it work? And Tom Thumb is like, wow, poor Tom Thumb. He just wants to be liked. He really is just like so glad that someone's paying attention to him. And it's like, yeah, I'll tell you all about it. I thought you didn't care, man. And you can see what's happening. It's just like, oh. And he goes in the middle of the night. He picks up Lady Lark out of her bed, puts her in the device,
drugs her asleep.
Oh yeah, drugs her to sleep, to stay asleep, and
no hypo though. He just uses an arrow.
Yeah, he like breaks the arrow. It's like the fumes in front of her nose just to keep her asleep. Puts her in the mind control device, and the next morning she wakes up and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I said all those things. I actually do love you, and I want to get married." And they embrace and kiss. And Blue Eagle's like, something's not up. Something weird's up. And yeah, that's where that one ends. So
I wish Arcana had been in that scene, because she would have been the one who would know, like, wait, what?
Wait, Arcana was in that scene. She was also in the background, like,
right, but she doesn't have any like thought balloon or reaction to
right, yes.
Like, she should be like, wait, what? Yesterday you told me you were going to say no.
Well, and like, yeah, Blue Eagle is legitimately confused as well, because she was talking about how the relationship was on the rocks, and like she was real unsure about it. So yeah, I think we're going to see some fallout. We're really starting to very clearly set up a lot of the members of this team as villains. I mean, Nuke was set up as a villain, but he's already dead now. And Archer is just like a clear villain. Spectrum, I'm still not sure how exactly he's going to play out. Has still done some villainous things. Maybe they're going to try and make him look more innocent, in comparison to this terrible thing that Archer did. It's a strange direction to go. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, like, you can at least understand Hyperion being like, oh, we're going to take guns away and it's going to help these people. But, like, this should be the level for most people, even people that are, if you're like me, don't think that everybody needs, assault rifles. But that it's like, okay, this is kind of the line here where you're like, hey, if you're convicted of a crime, you lose free will. And it's like, wait, what? Like, back up a second. Yeah. And then that not only does most of the league approve of that, but that Archer is like, I'm actually going to use this to trick women into having sex with me, or to marrying me even. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's way bad. So it's a pretty clear, like, yeah, it really does villainize the rest of the team along with it. Which is, yeah, it's interesting to see where all this is going to go. How's it going to play out with Amphibian and Arcana? What's Blue Eagle going to do?
I did appreciate, and it was a small moment, but what Wonder Woman, I can't remember her name, Power Princess or whatever.
Yeah.
She is like, what's the problem? Like, this is the easiest and best way to rehabilitate people. And I was like, you would think that, Wonder Woman. You've got a purple ray that turns people good, and you've had it since the 40s, and you have the lasso of truth. Mm-hmm. So like you've always been anti-free will.
Yeah. I was just flipping back through, and I didn't notice this until now, but Tom Thumb's desk has a bunch of little notes all over it. One says change socks, which is kind of funny that he's got to remind himself. Another one is underwater tank. I wonder what Amphibian thinks of that. Okay. We got lots of interesting stuff coming up.
Well, and it seems like
dynamics.
Yeah, and Arcana's knows she's pregnant, so she's probably at least a month pregnant with 8 months to go. So I wonder if that's going to come into play in the final issue or two. I like this book a lot, as we've talked about this. I do feel like I'm settling into a groove where I'm really bored by the first 10 pages of fights. And then the good stuff is the last 15 pages of the issue. And it's been pretty consistent. Like in this time, I'm like, I don't really care about this fight. I'm going to read it, but I don't really care. And then the good stuff is the non-fighting, like the really good stuff is all the team dynamics and the different stories and the interpersonal dynamics. And that's always the back half of every issue. So.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I love the dynamic of the covers for the last 2 or 3 issues where it makes it look like it's a regular superhero book, the way the cover frames, like, oh no, Hyperion's going to battle this guy from the future, or like, oh no, Lady Lark is having her mind controlled. And it's like, it's very much not a traditional comic book scene when those things happen. They're literally like one page of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it's not like a big, like, this is the end of the story. It's like, there is a bunch of fighting because I feel like they think they have to have some action, but then the rest of it, like you said, is just like moral quandaries about like, is it right to go this far?
Right, exactly.
Well, I'm looking at the next cover. It's the Institute of Evil. We got a team of bad guys here. Mess with the Institute of Evil and your loved ones die. Oh boy, can't wait to see how that goes.
Now, do you get an associate's degree from the Institute of Evil, or is it like a doctorate? Like, what kind of program do they have at the Institute of Evil?
I got my doctorate in evil studies, so I don't. Yeah, it's one of those things. You just, I don't think they are nationally recognized by who recognizes schools.
Whatever accreditation.
Yeah, I don't know if ITT Tech or any of those ones that you watch commercials for were accredited or not, or if they were just like trade schools that helped you get jobs.
I think that's what it is. I think the Institute of Evil is more of a trade school that teaches you how to break into safes and how to do like practical things that are actually useful in life, you know?
Like it's going to teach you to be like a Joker henchman.
Yeah, I think that
you're going to double your salary within a year of graduating from the Institute of Evil. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, wow. I think so. Yeah, I mean, you don't just waltz up and like know how to be a good henchman out of nowhere. Yeah. you gotta go to school for that stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, makes sense to me. Well, I'm assuming that's what the next issue is going to be all about. So we'll see how the Institute of Evil operates, and yeah, just curious to learn more of these team dynamics. Really, the only people who haven't had like their own solo spotlight kind of issues at this point are like, I guess, Blue Eagle we didn't see too much of in this issue. Same with Arcana and like Amphibian. We're getting to know a little bit more about them, but still haven't seen too much of them yet.
Whizzer's in the top image of the next issue, though, like that little.
Oh yes, Marvel. Whizzer as well.
Because it was definitely Archer was on this issue.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I bet and Whizzer's also a big family man. So next issue threatening their family, maybe that's part of it. Mm-hmm. We'll see. But yeah, I'm excited to keep reading these. Cool. What else are we doing next time? We are reading... Oh, it's still October next time. Whoa. The spookiest month of the year continues to be spooky by continuing. Harrow County is what we are reading. It's a Dark Horse book from 2015 by Cullen Bunn. Oh, I didn't write down the artist's name. Who's the artist on these?
Tyler Crook.
The
artist is a crook.
Whoa. I thought this was horror month, not crime month. Come on. But we are reading the first volume, which is just 4 issues. Volume 1 called Countless Haints. I don't know anything about this other than that it's horror, pretty well received. It's ended in 2019 with 30-something issues.
Yeah, I don't know Cullen Bunn that well. We can talk probably about this more next episode. I don't know him that well. I remember him always as kind of like I would say the B and C tier Marvel books. Like when Captain America and Bucky, those kind of books.
I feel like I've read something. Googling his name real quick here. We'll see.
But people seem to like the art. It's going to be like spooky in the South. Somebody's going to find their spooky legacy. But it's well received. So I think it'll be good, though. The art looks good. Seems ripe for a Netflix series like Lock and Key, which I really liked Lock and Key. So.
Oh, he wrote a bunch of Deadpool stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've read some of that. Oh, he also wrote Fear Itself. Was that good?
No.
Oh, wait, no, hold on.
Matt
He didn't write Fear Itself proper. He wrote a lot of the side stories. Okay.
Yeah, maybe those are good, but yeah, Fear Itself was not very good.
Yep. But actually a bunch of stuff he's written. Wow, okay. Written more than I thought he had. Well, cool. We'll check out some Cullen Bunn. We'll let you know how he is. And we'll let you know how the book is, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be like Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, where I'm like, I never liked his Marvel books, and then like he just like killed it with Sabrina,
like doing his own thing.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that's going to happen this time.
Yeah, and actually, what was it, Chris? I think you said that this book it kind of looked like it had Sabrina vibes to it as well. Yeah, so I'm definitely excited for that. So yeah, join us next time. Of course, we'll do Squadron Supreme number 5 at that point. So yeah, I'm excited. What else we got going on? Anything else of interest here, Vince?
Nope, got nothing to plug this time.
Mm-hmm. Chris, how about you?
We will have a spooky themed Your Stupid Minds coming out soon. In the meantime, check out, I recently re-listened to the one we did last year, Demon Wind, with special guest star Adam Pecht. That was a lot of fun. We have some great jokes about how many people you could get to go to a remote haunted farm. And, the answer may shock you.
It may shock you. That's a good way to pose that. It might not shock you at all.
Yeah, it may not.
That's what I want to put
we also have good tips, which would also apply to you, Kia, which one of them, Adam has improv experience. So we said, if you just say like, a level 2 improv class is at this haunted barn, then, not only can you get maybe, 6 people to show up, they'll give you like $100. So
they'll pay you for this exclusive, unique improv retreat.
Yes, hilarious. Exactly.
Haunted Improv Retreat. That's a movie right there.
Yep.
Whoa. I do want to say Your Stupid Minds last episode, Cats, was really good, and Cats is now on HBO. So if you want to do a double feature of cats and then follow along with their podcast, you can do that now too.
Yep. Very fun, very fun. I've been recording some more video game footage of playing Mario. I played a really hard Zelda level that I finally edited. I think I'm editing a level every couple of weeks, so we'll see if we can stick to that. But I quite enjoyed it. You can follow me on YouTube and my plethora of videos there. Kia Rash with 3 R's in the middle. Yeah.
Nice.
But I think that's everything. I might record some videos of just like playing some puzzles. Everyone knows I am the Puzzmaster General, and so I might, just record some calm footage of some puzzling, some Bob Ross style, some calm, serene puzzling. We'll see. That might be fun.
Just like don't live stream it though, because I'm sure you'll get like somebody, they'll be like, Kia, the piece is right there. It's right there. It's right there. How did you not see it?
Like, you just don't read chat. That's okay. That's okay. Just don't read chat. But we'll see how all that goes. I might even get a green screen. I think it's interesting how fun it's been to just record some of this stuff and how easy it's been. Vince, did you do another This Was a Game recently?
It's been about 6 months probably. I did That Was a Game about Dragon's Lair 3D. Maybe even before quarantine started. I love doing it, and I've been recording a bunch. I just haven't been able to get my editing software together in the time. So I've been playing GoldenEye with Daniel Craig, and they changed all of GoldenEye. But we can talk about this off air.
How did you get him to play it with you?
Wow!
Well, he's had a lot of time off, not filming movies. So he came over. Him and his wife Rachel. They came over, and we played some GoldenEye. It was a lot of fun.
Wow!
That sounds like a Josh Gad show, but celebrity friends come to play video games with you. That would be fun.
Yep. Well, this has been fun. We're gonna stay spooky next time. We're gonna keep talking about video games probably. We managed to not talk about much wrestling this time. Oop, I jinxed it. Then I made it happen. We'll join you You will join us next time. We're not joining you for shit. You're gonna join us next time for these comics. Vince, I love you.
I love you too.
Chris, I love you.
Sorry, I've been committed to a mental institution.
Oh, jeez. It's okay. I was gaslighting you the whole time anyway.
No.
But listener, thank you for listening. I would never gaslight you. I love you all, and I will possibly murder you. But thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Listeners, he's a werewolf.